As we talk more about the atom, now we've mentioned protons and neutrons. We still have yet to discuss electrons, and so that will be the first video that I'll post here, a discussion of electrons. So electrons are different than protons and neutrons because they're found outside the nucleus. We'll talk about where they're at specifically. For now, we'll leave it at this, right? They're not found within the nucleus. They carry a negative charge. Protons positive, neutrons nothing, right? Oftentimes electrons I'll draw like this, E negative, because they carry a negative charge. So hopefully right now you're already imagining positive protons and negatively charged electrons are attracted to each other, and that will be really, really important. Also importantly, they don't contribute anything to mass or to weight. No contribution. No contribution to mass. When you find the mass, an AMU, of an atom, right, it's adding protons and neutrons. Electrons don't matter. The other thing to point out before we talk a little bit more in detail about electrons, right, is that in any atom, there's always the same number of protons as electrons. This means that any atom is neutrally charged. Neutrally charged. What does this mean? Well, go back to carbon, right? We spoke a lot about carbon in class the other day. Carbon has 6 protons. This means by definition, right, that it's got 6 electrons. Six protons, 6 electrons. Neutral, right? Same number of protons as electrons. Now recall, neutrons can vary. So maybe there are 6, maybe there are 7, maybe there are 8, and that would be unstable, right? But if we're talking about any atom on the periodic table, hydrogen, gold, mercury, calcium, same number of protons as electrons. It's also the case, right? We said that while protons define the chemical identity of the atom, all carbon has 6 protons. That's not the same for electrons, right? We'll see what happens when the number of electrons changes, and it will, right? But if you were to subtract one of these, maybe there's only 5 electrons, you'd still have some carbon here, right? Because there are 6 protons. But now you wouldn't have an atom that's uncharged. You'd have something slightly different. You'd have a charged particle, and we're going to get into that, like I said, in a second. But before we go further in that direction, let's talk a little bit more about arrangement of electrons around the nucleus. So electrons are attracted. They're attracted to the positive nucleus, where all of the protons are. So even though they're outside of the nucleus, right, they don't sort of drift off into space because the positive charge of the nucleus keeps the negative electrons, right, attracted to it. Instead, the electrons circle around the nucleus, and they do so in 3-dimensional, what are called orbitals. So they circle the nucleus in 3D orbitals. Imagine that you've got your nucleus right at the center, and the nucleus is small. If you're a football fan, right? Imagine if you took a pencil eraser and placed it right in the middle of Lambeau Field at the 50-yard line. Electrons are going to circle this nucleus like around the outside of the stadium. So this is 3-dimensional, right? It's not circular, although we're going to talk about kind of flattening it out. Another way to think about this, right? Think about the protons in the nucleus, and then you put a shell over it, right? A 3-dimensional sphere over the top, right? Not just a circle, but a sphere. Poor drawing. And so you have electrons that are zipping all over this sphere. So in our analogy, right, the protons are at the center. Imagine you put like a golf ball that surrounds the inner portion, right, that surrounds the nucleus here. And the electrons would buzz around the surface of the golf ball, okay? Now, this sphere can't hold unlimited electrons, right? It's got a certain number that it can hold before we have to add another sphere, okay? So now, coming across and over the top of the golf ball, we're going to put another layer, another shell around it, another orbital, right? Now imagine that we've got a softball over the top of our golf ball, right? So at the center, we've got the nucleus. The first orbital would be the surface of the golf ball. The second orbital would be the surface of the softball. And electrons are going to zip around that, okay, and circle that. And they're going to go in all directions, right? So it's like a gnat that's buzzing around the surface. It can go at any direction at any point, but it doesn't float away, nor does it get pulled into the nucleus. It stays on the surface of the softball. And once the surface of the softball, again, so to speak, is full, right? Maybe now we add the surface of a basketball, and you'll have electrons that are buzzing around the surface of the basketball, okay? So the more electrons we have, right, the bigger the shells, the bigger these orbitals, right, or maybe not even bigger, the more orbitals we have, each one of them getting successively bigger, right? So if this orbital is the size of the surface of a golf ball, and this orbital is the size of the surface of a softball, and this orbital is the size of the surface of a basketball, okay? And I mentioned this already, but these orbitals, right, have a finite number of electrons that they can hold. So for example, this first orbital has a maximum capacity of 2 electrons. So in something like hydrogen, right, there's the little electron. You can imagine it zipping around the surface of the golf ball. Again, it's going randomly in all directions, right? It never goes in toward the nucleus. It never leaves the orbital, but it's zipping around like a little gnat around the surface, right? In all kind of crazy directions. And if you go to the next element, here's an atom of helium. Helium has 2 protons. That means it has 2 electrons. And so now it's got 2 electrons that are zipping around the surface of the golf ball. Anything beyond that, right? This second orbital has to be added because the first one can only fit 2 electrons. Right? So here they show a second circle around, but really, right, what we have is another orbital, another 3-dimensional orbital. So we're going to put like the surface of a softball around. So in this second orbital, 8 electrons can be fit. Okay, so the first 2 electrons are zipping around the surface of our golf ball, right, the first orbital. And then the next electron, the third one, and the fourth one, and the 5th one, and the 6th one, right? They're all zipping around the next orbital, okay? The sort of the softball surface, so to speak, right? And again, once we have 8 total electrons in the second orbital and 2 electrons in the first orbital, if now we're full in the second orbital, a third orbital gets added. And it can accommodate 8 electrons. The nice thing here, right, is that every orbital after this, right, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th, they can always accommodate 8 electrons, okay? So take something like an atom of sulfur. Sulfur has a total of 16 protons. Because it's an atom, that means it has to have 16 electrons, okay? And so with 16 electrons, where do we put them? Well, 2 of them can go into the first orbital. But now that orbital's full. 8 can go into the second orbital. But now that orbital's full. Well, 8 can go into the next orbital, but we don't have 8, right? We only have 6. Because if we have 16 protons, we have 16 electrons. So the remaining 6 electrons that we have fit into that third orbital, right? That third 3-dimensional orbital around the nucleus. Now, because we can't draw 3-dimensional orbitals, right? we draw what are called Lewis dot diagrams, where essentially we place electrons around the nucleus in 2 dimensions, right? Understanding that that's not really how it is, right? It's not a 2-dimensional space that the electrons zoom around, that they zoom around in 3 dimensions. But we're going to flatten that out. So we'll look at what they did in this picture with, say, boron, right? We'll take a look at an atom of boron. Boron has 5 protons. And so again, as an atom of boron, it has to have 5 electrons. Why? Because atoms are neutral. So the question is, how do we depict having those 5 electrons? Well, we've got our 5 protons in the nucleus, right? And then we've got that first, not 3-dimensional orbital, but let's call it a 2-dimensional shell, okay? That's the case that electrons are usually placed together in pairs. Now, there are some reasons for this if you take chemistry you'll talk about, right? So those first 2 electrons that we have to place go together in pairs. Well, again, now we have to go to the second orbital here, right? So our 2 electrons are stuck together in a pair. We still need to place 3 other electrons, okay? Now, when you're placing more than 2 electrons, we go around the shell, right? We start at the top, we go to the right, then to the bottom, and then to the left to place our electrons, right? One at a time, and then we can pair them up. I'll show you what I mean in a second, right? So we have 3 electrons to place. The first 2 are paired together here. Number 3 at the top, number 4 to the right, and number 5 at the bottom. And so this would be a Lewis dot structure for the atom of boron. Let's take a look at a little more complicated example. Let's look at aluminum. An atom of aluminum has 13 protons. That means it has 13 electrons. 13 protons, 13 electrons. So I always draw the 13 to represent the nucleus. And the first shell gets its 2 electrons that again come together. This means we have not 13 electrons to place anymore, but 11, right? We've already placed the first 2. So then we start top, right, bottom, left. There's 4 electrons. And now we pair them up. Top, right, bottom, left. All right, well, this takes care of 10 electrons. I still have 3 to go. Third shell. Start at the top, right, bottom. Now we have a Lewis dot structure for the atom aluminum, okay? The outermost layer, right, it gets a special term. It's called the outermost shell, right? This is the valence shell. Oh, that's bad. I write in cursive, by the way, because otherwise it clicks, clicks, clicks every time I lift up my stylus here. This valence shell is the outermost shell. When full, the atom is stable. What do I mean by that? I mean that it won't take part in chemical bonding, right? Neon and argon are examples of atoms that are very stable. They don't bond with many other atoms, right? But when there's space in the valence layer, what happens is these atoms react with other atoms to try to fill that layer, right? So we'll talk about bonding and how this occurs in the subsequent video.